I've been journaling for 5 years straight, and over the years, I've accumulated a lot of different types of journals. I've tried ones with direction, I've tried ones with no direction, and to be honest, over the course of the 5 years, I've started to create a framework for myself that allows me to show up a few different ways throughout the day. One where I feel powerful, another one where I feel present, and more importantly, when I do these journal practices daily, I feel like I'm at peace. At least 80% of the time, maybe 50% of the time, maybe 20% of the time. Hi guys, if you're new to this channel, my name is Coach Royce. I've been a trainer for 15 years. I'm an owner of 2 gyms here in Las Vegas. And over those years, I've realized the most transformational athletes are not only having a keen understanding on their fitness and nutrition, they also have a keen understanding of wellness in general. So if you are wanting to have more of a holistic look around your health, this channel is going to be for you. So with that said, let's get into my discovery of something that I call the 5G journal framework. I want you to separate your journal into 2 parts. One where it is an AM side, which is the left side, and then 2 on the right side, it's a PM side. The second mini step you have to do before we dive into the 5G framework is you have to at least put a date on there because you want to know how long ago, or at least a way you can document what's going on in your life. And then the other side, and this is just extra credit, this allows me to come back to my journals and read a particular segment of why it may be important for me to read, is I try to add another title. An example can be why this day was so hard, or during this season, I'm always like this. It just gives me a really quick snapshot of what I'm talking about in that journal. All right, step 1 of this 5-part framework is gratitude. And here's primarily the reason why. At the start of the day, oftentimes my emotion is anger, because a lot of times I have to wake up super early and I don't want to wake up that early. I want to sleep in a little bit. I'm going to put a little snapshot on here, but there was a book that Dr. Hawkins created, and there was a little graph that had all of the emotions, and then all of the emotions in terms of what type of activity that's happening. And anger is one of the lower states. Just by gratitude, I'm slowly leveling up my emotion, essentially warming up to the day, especially if I want to win the day. Starting by gratitude allows me to evolve my emotions in a way where I can at least warm up to what I'm supposed to try to accomplish. So once you have the gratitude, write down gratitude at the top. And then I list out 3 things that I'm grateful for today. It could be something really small, or it could be something very large. It doesn't necessarily matter what it is. I've written down, I'm grateful for this cup of coffee because it smells great. I'm grateful for this morning because I'm able to meditate without my son climbing on me. Or it could be a person. I'm grateful for this particular client because this particular client is always so peaceful anytime I get to train her. It's such a blessing. So that is the first thing. I'm just going to write down 3 things. And that's one piece, but you want to go a layer deeper. And this is where I might lose some of the dudes, which is fine, but I used to be one of those dudes. So if you're here, don't worry, you're not alone. I promise. What's the feeling it creates? When I say something about coffee, it makes me feel productive. When I say something about having peace in the morning, I feel at peace. Or when I feel something about having an amazing client, I feel lucky. Right? Those are some really interesting emotions, but you want to document those emotions because those emotions are impacting the outcome of your day. And over the course of 365 days, if you're journaling, you're going to notice different outcomes happen because of the emotion you've created throughout the day. When I feel angry, I have a set of actions that I do. When I feel at peace or joyful, there's a set of actions that I do. And then my life's results are a lot differently, both physically, mentally, spiritually. anything in particular that I'm trying to tackle in the next 90 days. So it's important that you write that emotion down. Over time, you'll know what that is, but really what that's building is awareness that emotion is actually what's driving a lot of your actions. It's not just the logical side. I thought it was only the logical side, but it's a combination of both. And I'd argue the emotional side is probably controlling even more than you think. Super important. Now, this is extra credit, but I do this every single day, and it's been extremely fruitful, especially if you're running a team, or if you are in a relationship, or if you just have a lot of friends and family that you're trying to nurture something more powerful. And that's turning the gratitude into actions, especially when it's a particular person. For example, I had a client. I'm grateful that I have this client today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to text that client. And I'm like, hey, by the way, thank you so much for today. I love training you because of X, Y, and Z, because you bring this energy to the life. You have an optimistic look around problems, and it's just very inspiring to be around you. On one end, me doing that, I feel great. But on the receiving end, because I've received gratitude in action before from my coaches, from my clients, from my wife, where they would just tell me something really, really nice. And what ends up happening, one, I feel better. And then the second thing is I continue to do that thing that they were grateful for. If my wife is like, hey, thank you doing for dishes, like it's allowed me to sleep better and I'm able to take care of Lucas, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm going to go do it again. So by the act of being grateful for that person, whatever small, large, big action they've done, a lot of times, and it's not 100%, but I want to say it's like 80 to 90% of the time, they continue to do that thing that's made me feel grateful. Like people love to serve people. That's just what I've learned throughout this journaling thing, especially when I started to implement this gratitude towards action. Okay, step number 2 is gripe. And gripe is just a fancy term for frustrations, anger, adversities, obstacles, but something that is really heavy on your mind. So what I want you to write in this little section of your journal is what is the heaviest on your mind? And I say the heaviest because there's always at least 1 or 2 things. If you are watching this, there's probably 1 or 2 things right now that you're constantly thinking about. And most of the time when I'm going through life, I just keep it all here and then I'm overthinking. And when I'm overthinking, I'm making bad decisions. Sometimes I'll just kind of distract myself through binge watching social media, playing video games, eating food. A lot of my bad habits happen because I'm just overthinking. And because I'm overthinking, I get super stressed. And anytime I'm stressed, I'm making bad decisions. What this allows me to do is it allows me to take what's happening in my head and then I put it on paper. I advise that you just do one thing on there. I know there's going to be 100 things on there, but try to write the heaviest thing that's on your mind. There's a couple of things why this is such an important piece. A lot of times we have an issue happening in our head and we're in this like Scrabble mode and we don't quite know what we're actually fighting for, or we don't know the demon we're fighting in the dark. So as I'm writing these things down, I often find that it's not that person. Like for example, to be pretty transparent here, a lot of times I'll put my own teammates or my wife on here and I'll find I'm writing these things down. I'm like, wait, it's not even the person I'm fighting for. It's actually my communication. It really illuminates the monster that you're trying to fight. Is it a people thing or is it a process thing? And in my case, oftentimes it's a me thing. It's rarely a them thing. By just writing that down, it exposes what you're supposed to battle. It just clears up the mind and it reduces my stress. And again, I make better decisions when I'm doing that. The next thing that I add to this is, how is this good for me? So I write that down. How is this good for me? And I just start listing things down. It's going to be hard at first because you're going to be frustrated. But what I often find is I find things that are like super advantageous. And to be completely honest here, guys, I shot this same exact episode yesterday and I journaled about it. And the reason why I journaled about it is I did almost 3 to 4 hours of video shooting this thing and I'm doing the hand thing for the first time. And I go into editing and there was no audio, which was a nightmare because I spent 4 hours on it. So I'm writing all these things down. And the gripe moments, I was like, I'm just frustrated. I wasted 4 hours of my time. This is really annoying. I'm pouring it all in. And then I get to the part is like, how is this good for me? And I started to unlock some pretty cool things. It was like, oh man, this is just practice. One, because going into it the second time, I realized there are better ways to do something. Maybe pre-shooting what I'm drawing or rewriting what I'm drawing and simplifying the words, because my original paper, it was kind of blurry. And it was really hard to see. So now I'm actually using markers. And another thing is it gets me to really systemize this flow. I realize I'm not very creative after 12. So I noticed, it was like, I have to shoot things before 12 and I can create ideas after 12. That's actually a better use of my time. So I'm able to reflect on what works really, really well for me. So moving forward, I took that frustration and now I've used it as a weapon. It's a gift. That's kind of how one of these little segments can be so impactful in whatever you're trying to tackle. It's absolutely changed my life. Just this little section. If you guys skip everything, use that section, it's going to completely change everything. That's crazy. The next thing that we want to go over, which is the third step to this, which is growth. This is the part that I love. We're going to take it a step further. Inside this step, there are going to be 3 mini steps. So first thing that you want to do here is write down growth. And then you want to separate these little segments into 3 parts. You just draw a little line here. You draw a little line there. And then these 3 parts, it allows me to remember. I like to remember things using the same letters. The first little section you want to write down is collect. And then the second section on this little thing that we created is to write down correlate. And then the final thing is cultivate. Now on the collect end, in that end, you want to just write down things that you've learned. So what did I learn today? And it could be a number of things. It could be 10 things. It could be 3 things. But oftentimes that I find throughout the day is I learn maybe 1 or 2 things that really stand out. And how do I know it stands out is it invokes a feeling. Like I get an aha feeling from it. It's not just a random affirmation quote that I just saw on someone's shirt. It's something that's like, oh man, that is game changing for sure. I'm going to write that thing down. That's one layer to this step. So write that down. You could write it in verbatim or you can just write it in your own words. And that's important. That's part 1. But again, if you're listening to this channel, I like to go deeper into this. The next thing is you go into the correlate section. And I think this is the most valuable, especially if you're a creator or if you're a teacher, if you're a practitioner of some sort, this is actually the most valuable. How does this relate? It's important because you're getting that aha moment because some reason that quote that you learned, that skill set that you learned, that tool set that you learned, that mindset that you learned is really impacting you in one way. And it's impacting you because of X, Y, and Z. So an example, there's a Gandhi quote that's be the person you want them to be. Like that's a very powerful, that was one of the aha moments the first time I actually read that. I correlated really well to that because I struggled helping my clients change, whether it's a nutritional change, whether it's a sleep change, whether it's reducing stress and anxiety change. If I wanted to change my clients, it had to start out with me. I had to conquer this myself. I felt like a fraud if I'm telling them to do things and I'm not doing them myself. So that's how I correlated with it. I'm like, that's 100, I get it. This is why this is not working because I'm not doing the things that I want them to do. What would happen? Let's just run an experiment. If I did these things first, would some of them do the things that I'm teaching? And ironically, it actually kind of works. And most of them will. And some of them won't. It's just the way the world works. But a majority of them do. And partly of why I'm successful in the training field that I'm in is primarily because I do everything that I tell them to do at like 100x, not just 1x, at 100x. If I tell them to meditate, I'm meditating. If I tell them to journal, I'm journaling every day. If I tell them to run 10 miles, I'm going to run 100 miles throughout the month. Whatever that is, I take it to even an extreme. And it's been such a guiding principle for helping others is just be the person you want them to be. Part number 4. I didn't have a cool name for this. I don't know if this is actually an actual word, but I put gains because I'm in the gym, because that's what the guys say in the world that I'm in. They're like, I'm here to get gains. And gains is a representation of really just writing 3 accomplishments that you've had today. And I do this in the PM for a very, very specific reason. I've done this in the morning before, but it's more impactful when I do this at night. So what are the 3 things that I accomplished? It could be shooting this video. It could be me working out. It could be me having that hard conversation. It could be me signing up a brand new client. So I just write those accomplishments down. Again, we're going one layer deeper. How did it make me feel? And oftentimes when I write these accomplishments down, it invokes a feeling of at peace, of accomplishment, of feeling worthy. Those emotions elicit like a recovery state for me, because I'm constantly in the fight or flight, actually more fight than flight state, where I'm constantly in this sympathetic state, which is great for solving problems, but awful for repairing your muscle and repairing your mind and getting restful sleep. So I've noticed my sleep has drastically changed the moment I started to acknowledge my accomplishments, even how small. Sometimes I'll have large ones and I never actually think that it's actually an accomplishment. In fact, what I did in the past was I would just write down my next problems to solve for tomorrow. What that would create is I would go to sleep super stressed out. I'd wake up at 1, then I'd wake up at 2, and then I'd wake up at 3, and then I'd wake up at 4. Oh man, those were some rough times. Anyways, yeah, so just make sure, remember your accomplishments and celebrate them, and then see what it does to your body. This is not just the mental side of these things, guys. The output that you see of the things that I've done physically, and also some of the clients that have been extremely successful in their weight loss and their weight muscle gain journey, is primarily because they're also implementing, a majority of, at least the people we were with, have actually implemented some versions of what we're talking about. Part 5, and this is the last piece, and that's goals. Normally, I start my goals in the morning, but I feel like it's a waste of time. On this goals section, I just recite my 90-day goals, and I only do one thing. I've done 3, right? There's some journals that have 3 goals, but I find myself scatterbrained and I get actually overwhelmed. But when I just put one goal that I really want to tackle for the next 90 days, I'm laser focused in. It's kind of like that whole thing of when you buy a red car, you see that red car everywhere. It's the same with goals, and it actually does work. When you recite your goals, or you might have to rewrite your goals if you want to pivot, that's completely fine. You'll start to see opportunities. You'll start to see lessons that were never lessons at one point. I start to dream about it, and I start to wonder about it instead of worrying about it. I just rewrite my goals. I was like, hey, I really want to master this communication platform. I really want to do that. I want to be good. I'm okay at coaching one-on-one. Can I coach one-to-many in this particular platform? So the goal that I write all the time is like, I want to get better at this YouTube thing. That's just what I write. I just want to get better. Like, it doesn't necessarily even have to be a numerical thing. Guys, if you like this particular episode, we do a whole series on wellness leading to weight loss, wellness leading to winning. Make sure to click on one of these. We're going to do more of those. If it's not there yet, it's probably because this is the first episode, but you'll see more.